First off, I need to tell you who Nice Shoes is. Nice Shoes is an independent creative studio based in New York, where space is very, very limited. And I know we also have 4 locations across New York and also around North America itself. What I want to show you is a small little film that we've done. This is an 8-minute film that was done for the National Museum of Qatar. It's all natural gas bubbles simulated here. It's all rendered on the cloud. There's 30 different monitors, all 4K resolution, so there's 240 minutes of 4K that we had to develop numerous times and render out numerous times as I'm sitting in Doha waiting for the final results to try to fix changes that for the artists that we're doing on this thing. So it shows you the power of the cloud being across 7,000 miles in between where the production was going on and where the installation was going on. We basically had 2.5 days to basically get this film right. This was the final the final installation that was being done in the museum. The museum was opening within 48 hours of this being finished. So it shows you the power of what we can do on the cloud itself. It's a pretty interesting little piece. So I want to explain what no walls is. No walls, basically to Nice Shoes, is a mentality. It's a mindset and how you actually do things. And really the way we want to take that to everywhere that we go is a mindset from an engineering perspective is not being limited by the size of your studio and not being limited by the size of your wallet. As an independent studio, we run in this all the time. You know, what resources do we have? How much capital do we have? What expenses do we have? And how do we solve Adrian's problems when he comes to me and says he needs more render nodes? And now, that was a number of years ago, but we've had to work on it since then and how we do this. And basically in 2012, our business changes. Any studio does, you know, post-production, production, they change. Every job is different. Every need is different. You change artists. They have different needs that are available to them. So in 2012, we hired a bunch of new artists that were doing film VFX and basic music videos. We had a limited 80-node render farm. We were trying to do hundreds of shots. There was no capital expenses, so we basically, from an engineering perspective, we were looking at what was our options. We looked at rental farms. Were not an option. We didn't have enough power in New York. We looked at outsourcing the rental farm itself, or the frames to be rendered. That wasn't an option because it broke the workflow. The biggest thing with all these things is you need to make it seamless for the artist to work on. They need to have the ability to look at those frames when they come back, not have to have a broken workflow because it destroys the creativity that they're trying to work on. So in 2012, during January and February, we're doing this from an engineering point of view. I suppose at that point, we were actually doing all of our DR in the cloud already. We had our databases up there, our accounting was up there, all of our backups were up there. But we decided to take a chance and actually see if we can use that for compute. So we took our on-prem licenses, spun them up within a week or two, and we were up and running on testing the scenarios that were going on. This proved the concept that we can actually do this in 2012, have up to 250 nodes in the cloud rendering at that is. But the biggest thing was going on, the industry was not ready for it at that point. There was no such thing as rental licensing. The only way we could get this done is beg, borrow, and steal with the vendor manufacturers to give us temp licenses to get this work done, because it wasn't non-existent at this point. And then, I suppose during May through December, we were in production. We actually delivered everything we wanted to do at that point. It worked out quite well. So from an engineering point of view, from a company point of view, no walls to us is alive. It allows us to expand and contract as we needed to. We had no space in New York to allow this to happen. But some of the limitations we ran into is licensing options. They were non-existent. Every time I went to the salesperson, they handed me a quote to buy another 100 nodes or 100 licenses. That's really not an option when you only need them for a week or two. The cloud networking at that point was limited. There was very little direct connections to these data centers that were built around the world. That was a big issue for us in how we get those things. We also then had staff changes. As you know, the industry changes, there's creativity that changes, company decisions on how you want to work, where you want to work, and the type of work you want to do. So we didn't want to make a huge investment into this large infrastructure we had. So we sat there for a number of years. From 2012 to basically 2017, we were working with the application manufacturers and the cloud manufacturers. Every single meeting we met them at, all the trade shows, and they asked what you wanted from point, and it said, please address the rendering needs that we have. Please address the rental models that are out there. And it basically took 5 years of convincing them, along with the whole industry, pushing them this direction. So in 2017, it came to a realization that this is not possible. Most of the application manufacturers are on board. They're finalizing their plans. They're making progress in this area. We then, at this point, many years past when Adrian was there, we had to refresh our render farm at this point. I'm looking at my CapEx budget. I'm going, what do I do here? We know we have a proven solution with cloud-based rendering. Space in New York City is non-existent, to say the least, especially where we are on Park Avenue. We really don't want to put the render farm at one of our other offices. It really wasn't necessary at that point because we're just moving the problem to another location. So during my CapEx meetings, I decided we're not going to buy a render farm, where we're going to invest our money into our staff, we're going to invest our money into our enterprise connections to the cloud to make sure we can support this, and rent it as we need to. This was a big pushback from all the EPs we had to deal with and the artists. They really didn't understand it. They kept on going back to us at that point, just saying, I need to have this seamless. I don't want to have to worry about my render farms. And we had to go through this training process with the next generation of artists that we're working with on what happened. So in 2019, we were putting this solution together. We had this mandate and mindset from engineering, and we had the buy-in from our EPs. And really, in what's happened, it allows everyone now to compete and compute anywhere in the world. And that's the whole idea behind No Walls. And it really allows everyone in this room and our whole industry as a whole to work together and collaborate. So in 2019, what we're seeing is industry-wide application support, CPU, GPU support as you needed, cost-competitive pricing now. There's so much competition for these resources where you want to compute cloud bases everywhere, so you can really get a low price, so it is very, very cost-effective. Every vendor does off-prem support, and basically easy use from a startup point of view. To give you an example, we had a request from the VFX department. They had 40,000 20K frames to render out and deliver, plus all the cycling through there. It was asked to us on Friday, and we had to deliver them on Wednesday. So basically my team, and Phil Wardis is sitting in the back, he was riding the effort, spun up the whole environment, got the licensing worked through, and we delivered all 40,000 frames on a network we didn't have, because of the ability of the cloud allows you to do that. That kind of scalability is what you need in today's world. But the biggest thing about this whole thing is artist transparency. This will not be accepted in our industry until it's completely agnostic to the artists that are there and also the producers that are out there, which we are at today's world. In 2019, we have that. So I want to give you some examples from a business point of view, but also from an engineering point of view, because what I want my engineers to do and how I want them to work. So right now, we can have from 10 nodes to 1,000 plus nodes at any time, spin them up within a matter of an hour or two, get our licensing squared away. But I wanted to give you a small little comparison when I was making my 2018 CapEx decision for 2019. So a 50-node render farm, on-prem render farm versus a cloud render farm solution here. A high-performance node, which is a 96 virtual core machine running Nuke software, roughly costs you $1.50 an hour right now to render it. To put that same 50-node solution in, and that's just the render nodes, the software licensing, the network behind it. It's not including the storage, engineering costs, the soft costs, AC, none of that. It costs you $411,000. That's what all the analysis from the quotes we got. If you look at your analysis across the year and how much time you actually use those render nodes, a safe bet in our world was 25% of the time we're using it. So if you take that, if you have an extremely high performance render farm solution, it'll take you 915 days before you break even. That's CapEx of $411,000 is not a 96 core machine. It's roughly a 48 core machine. So you gotta think about it that way. So you have better resources than I could buy. A better comparison is the performance node with the Nuke software. We can render it out. It's 50 cents an hour, but I still have the same capital expense, the same utilization rates. It takes me 7.5 years to pay for it before I break even. And meantime, I have engineers tied up. I have hardware failures. I have all this licensing contracts that I gotta deal with all the time. So it's busy work for the corporations. It's busy work for a company that's supposed to be doing creative work, not doing managerial work. During that period of time, one thing to think of is the hardware life cycle is roughly 36 months. We all been working in this industry for a while. Hardware comes and goes. What happens is, it doesn't matter, 36 months in, around that period of time, artist says, it's too slow, it's taking too long to render, why is it doing this? We need to get new stuff. So you start this vicious cycle all over again, and you're not really improving. The cloud and the compute takes care of that. The biggest point of all, though, this is completely seamless for the artists. The artists can maintain it and manage it themselves with little support from engineering. There needs to be better management tools basically from an engineering point of view, but they're coming, and the application and cloud providers know that. So they're working on those tools very much. One thing I can't stress enough in this solution is the need for enterprise class connection. For this solution where we had the 40,000 frames and they're all 20K frames, how do you get that data back and forth? Because we're not storing the data in there. All we're doing is rendering it and bringing it back to New York. So you need to be able to have that connection where you know it's reliable, your latency is lower. A solution, but New York is a very unique environment. If anybody's been there or worked there, they know that. We pave through the nose for things that don't cost the same place, in other words. So just for an example, in New York, a 2 gig static connection is $1,900 a month. But that really doesn't work. So when you're implementing cloud workflows, I really recommend you look at a burstable connection. Because if you look at the same thing about utilization of your data patterns, of your render nodes, you have the same utilization issues with your network connection. So if you look at a 2 gig burstable solution, it's up to 10 gig, it's $4,100 a month, but that allows you to go up to 90% of that 10 gig pipe you can use without paying additional money for that. But if you look outside of New York, 1 gig speeds around $70, as low as $70. If you run a client-facing facility or if you have a lot of artists in place, it's important to understand that making this investment will give you overall satisfaction within your corporation or your artist environment. The clients be better, they'll have better connectivity, your staff will be better, they'll be able to play their music while they're working, no issues there. You have faster content retrieval, faster content delivery. And it's really about the quality of life when they're in the place. We have a lot of client attendance sessions. It's key for them to be able to have these resources. It's key for everyone in today's world to have this. But I can't stress enough, if you're going to make an investment making this connection, because it allows you then to grow based on basically everything that's said so far is based on this connectivity. So make your investment there. On the left is a small little example of a render solution, and this basic concept can be done on-prem or off-prem. It really doesn't change, and that's the way it needs to be designed, and that's the way it's being delivered by all the cloud providers. They're doing that kind of scenarios. But the next step for us in all of our locations is when we decided not to do that capital expenditure on the render nodes, render farms, We're taking that same process across all of our creative workstations and also our accounting workstations. So for the next steps was moving creative workstations to the off-prem. That's important to us. Then this whole environment that was talked about now exists up there. Allows worldwide collaboration, not just with our 5 offices we have. A single Atlas asset location, simplified workflows, and minimize the CapEx. That a small little example there is a prime example of what your engineering team will have to deal with along with your thin client scenario. So you'll be able to spend your resources on giving the artists a better environment to work in and a better solution. They can work as they need to. So what this really does, and that way that Nice Shoes does along with the no walls approach, is the way we look at this is from an engineering perspective and also from a company perspective. Technology drives creativity. Creativity drives fantastic content. And you can read the rest. It's really a full circle. The better tools we give artists, the better tools we make our life simpler. The way we don't spend money on unnecessary resources, it allows us to create better content. And it's really about that. Thank you much.